And now a big political shakeup last night in Louisiana as Senator Bill Cassidy is now the first elected GOP senator to lose renomination since 2012. President Trump endorsed one of his competitors, Congresswoman Julia Letlow, who now moves to a runoff. For more, let's bring in Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. Congresswoman Luna, thank you so much for joining us. There have been a lot of stories over the last couple months about how the midterms are going to be brutal for Republicans and the president's approval rating isn't where it used to be. But the president put his thumb on the scale last night, and both candidates that he liked prevailed. What does that tell you?
What we witnessed in Louisiana just sent a message to the entire political establishment. President Donald Trump is still the dominant force inside the Republican Party, and according to Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, he's not just influential, he's a kingmaker. Tonight we're breaking down the Republican primary shakeup, Trump's growing control over the GOP heading into the midterms, the battle over voter 1D and election security, rising gas prices, and why Democrats are suddenly talking about expanding the Supreme Court again. If you believe America needs strong leadership, secure elections, lower energy costs, and policies that put American citizens first, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update.
Look, I think President Trump is a kingmaker within the Republican Party. And look, Peter, I'm not a black pillar when it comes to the midterms. I know that we have James Blair, who's been putting out some great reporting. And if I can just share with the viewers, it doesn't mean that you don't donate and you don't go up and vote in the polls this November. But what it does mean is we have way better polling right now than we did as opposed to 2018. So in 2018, we had, I think, 30 toss-up races. Now we have 19. And I think the odds and the wind is in our sails.
And what would be the reason for that, Congresswoman? Because historically, the first midterms after a presidential election are hard for any president. The Democrats, the Republicans, just you look at all of them, it's always really hard. So why would the polling be better now?
Most certainly. I think that the fact that President Trump has gone through and he is actively and aggressively pursuing his campaign promises to the American people. Now, I will take a second to say the Senate needs to get off their butts and do the right thing and codify and especially work overtime to get Save America passed. And I saw that his recent mandate, which I did message the speaker about regarding voter ID Save America, needs to either be on the housing bill or on FISA. But ultimately, the American people wanted change. They got that change with the administration. And I will say President Trump actually just said something genius, of which we then are trying to codify now in some legislation that we put forward in removing the federal gas tax temporarily for the next 120 days. That would take 18 cents off gas and 24 cents off diesel, and those effects would be felt at the consumer level. I know that a lot of people are potentially, well, they're directly being impacted what's happening with Iran right now, but President Trump has been very clear that once that is done and finished and that he's able to successfully complete that mission, that you'll see a massive drop in these gas prices. And so until then, we have the power of the purse, and we're going to be exercising that. So I'm cautiously optimistic, as I think the president is, and definitely James Blair.
And I want to ask you about that. So this bill that you've got, 120-day pause on the 18-cent federal gas tax. Are there any Democrats that you have talked to in the House who support you in this effort?
I think they all support me because they know I'm right. However, I think they will all vote against it because, unfortunately, that has become really the shape of party politics in Washington, D.C. currently, which is upsetting. But as you know, Peter, they also just recently voted against supporting law enforcement. So you don't really have a lot of common sense out of the current Democrat Party.
I want to ask you about this big trip that we were on with President Trump and President Xi in Beijing last week. We went, President Trump wanted to talk about trade. President Xi wanted to talk about Taiwan. What happens now?
Well, I think that what they were really talking about was probably the Strait in Iran, but there was a forward-facing conversations. I think right now what you are seeing, and I actually would just like to share a story real quick. I remember being at dinner with President Trump when the Florida delegation had publicly endorsed him when he was campaigning in the 2024 election. And a lot of people don't know, but even though President Trump was not in office, he still maintained very good and open dialogue and respectful relationships with foreign leaders, Xi Jinping being one of them. And so all I will say is that right now, Xi Jinping, China knows not to mess with the president. But I think more importantly, the United States, at least on the world stage, is being respected. And I think moving forward, President Trump was very, very strong in regards to him backing our very public national security strategy, which everyone can read. And then also to the position where the United States is going to dominate and continue to push forward in regards to being #1 in the AI race, but also to understanding that we have to ensure that we maintain open dialogues, not just with China, but also Russia. And a lot of people forget that. And so I'm very happy to see that the president was there. I think that it was an extremely successful, not just meeting for, our delegates, but then also for both countries involved. And I look forward to seeing what else he will pull out of his hat of tricks here moving forward into the midterms. We're still hoping for that peace deal regarding Ukraine and Russia.
I want to ask you about something else. Kamala Harris is back, and she has decided that some of her positions maybe need to be even more progressive than when she was running for president, especially when it comes to the idea of expanding the Supreme Court and packing it with liberals. Listen to this.
And so I'm inviting us all to basically say, look, let's engage in a good old-fashioned round table where we agree there are no bad ideas. And let's invite then approaches and ideas that are about, for example, Supreme Court reform, including the notion of expanding the court.
No bad ideas. Congresswoman, is this where the Democrats are heading?
Yeah, unfortunately it is. She's not the only one that is saying this. They're also talking about removing the filibuster. That's something that both AOC, I think Ro Khanna has said. And so as we have stated before, we need everyone to show up and vote in the midterms. But I think this also goes to show, Peter, that when President Trump says they're going to remove the filibuster anyways, and then you have people like John Thune refusing to codify the agenda that the American people mandating and voting for President Trump, that's a problem. Right now, we have one of the biggest, most popular pieces of legislation in the country. That is literally Voter ID and Save America Act. That's an 80-20 issue. Democrats, Republicans, independents, they all want it. And yet you have people in the Senate like John Thune saying that they can't remove the filibuster or even embrace the talking filibuster, which is a workaround. And that's simply unacceptable. What I say is that if we can codify and bring forward change to secure our elections, then moving forward, I don't even know if Democrats might actually take the House back, because we would clean up the election process and they wouldn't be able to do all the funny business that we've seen historically. And so all I will say is that that's been our #1 fight. I'm very, very happy to see President Trump just came out with his Truth Social posting and all of that. And I am going to have a lot of fun when we return to Washington, ensuring that Save America gets put into either housing or FISA, because you saw he mandated it. And he's a kingmaker in the party. And so I think that leadership will have a change of heart on that matter.
Yeah, the kingmaker part reestablished last night. Congresswoman, this is a little bit of a turn, but I know this is a big issue for you. So in my job as a White House correspondent, we've been trying to shake loose some of the UFO files over at the White House. They gave us the first batch. When's the next batch?
Well, first of all, Peter, I want to give you credit because I know that you had a lot to do with that. We have our eyes and ears everywhere, so thank you for that. But I think our next batch should be those 40-plus files, and that would be coming out within the next 30 days, at least from what I'm hearing from the Pentagon, and we've been working very closely with them.
Well, we will stay on that, and I know that you will too. Congresswoman Paulina Luna, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Peter.
Fox News host Peter Doocy pressed Congresswoman Paulina Luna after a major Republican primary upset in Louisiana, where Senator Bill Cassidy reportedly lost renomination support after President Trump endorsed a challenger, and Luna didn't hesitate. She called President Trump a kingmaker inside the Republican Party. That statement matters because for months, corporate media outlets have been pushing the narrative that Republican momentum was fading ahead of the midterms. But these primary results tell a very different story. Trump-backed candidates are still winning, grassroots conservatives are still energized, and the America First movement clearly still has serious power. Luna argued that Republicans are polling better now because voters are seeing Trump actively pursue campaign promises instead of backing away from them. Whether people agree with every policy or not, many Americans respect leaders who actually follow through on what they said during the campaign. One major issue discussed was the economy and gas prices. Luna pushed for a temporary federal gas tax suspension for 120 days, arguing that Americans are getting crushed at the pump and need immediate relief. And honestly, this is where Washington disconnects from everyday Americans. Working families don't care about political theater, they care about affording groceries, gas, rent, and basic necessities. She also took aim at Senate Republicans for moving too slowly on codifying voter ID laws and election security measures. Now, whether you agree with every proposal or not, election integrity remains one of the biggest concerns among conservative voters. Millions of Americans simply want confidence that elections are transparent, secure, and fair. Then the conversation shifted overseas. Luna praised Trump's handling of foreign leaders like Xi Jinping, arguing that America appeared stronger and more respected under Trump's leadership style. She emphasized the importance of maintaining open dialogue with major world powers while still protecting American interests, especially in areas like artificial intelligence and national security. And this is where many conservatives believe Trump still has a unique advantage politically. His supporters see him as unpredictable to America's adversaries, but focused on protecting American strength on the world stage. The interview also touched on comments from Kamala Harris and progressive Democrats discussing Supreme Court reform and even expanding the court. Luna warned that Democrats continue moving further left on major institutional issues, including the filibuster and federal power. Conservatives see that as a warning sign heading into the next election cycle. Now here's my take. Whether critics like it or not, Donald Trump still dominates Republican politics. Every endorsement, every rally, every primary result continues to prove that the Republican base has not moved on from the America First agenda. And the bigger issue here is trust. A lot of voters feel ignored by career politicians in both parties. They want secure borders, lower inflation, affordable energy, safer communities, and leaders who actually keep promises. That frustration is fueling political momentum across the country right now. Finally, Luna briefly addressed ongoing UFO and Pentagon disclosure efforts, saying more files could reportedly be released in the coming weeks. So even that debate is far from over. At the end of the day, this interview showed something important. The battle over the future of America is not slowing down. The fight over energy prices, election laws, foreign policy, and the direction of the courts is only getting bigger as we move closer to the midterm. Do you agree with Paulina Luna that Trump is still the Republican Party's kingmaker? Or do you think the GOP needs a different direction moving forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this report with other Americans who want honest political coverage without the corporate media spin.